Uh, my name is Hammad, and I've been in this industry for like almost 5 years, and currently working at Nisam as a UI developer. Uh, Nisam is a good company to work with, but the only concern I have with them is my job title. Why I am a UI developer and everyone is a software engineer there. So I am surrounded with many Java developers there, and I had a discussion with one, and he was like, यार आप तो UI डेवलपर हो तो आप सिर्फ UI पे काम करते हो कि ज़्यादा कुछ कॉम्प्लेक्स तो कुछ होता नहीं होगा तो उनको ऐसा लगता है कि मतलब कि सारा काम प्रोजेक्ट का वही करता है और हम तो बस बटन हिला रहे हैं आगे पीछे और कुछ नहीं कर रहे दिल में आया बोलूँ ज़रा आओ ज़रा रिडक्स पे स्टेट मैनेजमेंट देखो CSS देखो Alright, so let's come back to the topic and style encapsulation in React. And as Mashood has given the overview, so I will just quick start it. So once upon a time, everyone was Mamnoon Hussain, and river was flowing very fine, sun was rising at the time. But suddenly, one engineer from Facebook in 2014 comes in and raises the topic of CSS in JS. So everyone just loses their mind and say like, why we are doing inline CSS again? That's a bad thing, right? So, well, in 2015, I guess people started working on inline CSS and created many libraries on the support for them. So we will look over in CSS in JS as well, but let's get started with the basic methods. So CSS is broken and everyone knows it, right? We have like by default CSS uses global scope. So global scope is a no-no in JavaScript, and we all know about this. And why are we still using it in CSS? So because of that global scope, we face like specificity war issues, inheritance issues, and by separation of technologies, I mean like in component-based architecture, we have only one JS file. So there is your JS, and why not, if your CSS is always there, then you can look one component and decide like what is happening here, right? तो अगर फॉर एग्जांपल मैं एक एलिमेंट रिमूव कर देता हूँ अपनी किसी कंपोनेंट से और उसकी स्टाइल्स जाहिर सी बात है वो नेक्स्ट स्टाइल शीट मतलब CSS की फाइल में पड़ा हुआ है तो मैं उसको रिमूव करना भूल गया तो एक बड़े प्रोजेक्ट पे अगर आप इस तरह भूलते जाओ तो एक टाइम आता है कि वो एक डेड कोड हो जाता है आपके लिए और वो फजूल में एक जगह ले रहा है आपके लिए जिसकी कोई मतलब देखा नहीं जाता उसको जाहिर सी बात है आप एक टीम में काम कर रहे हो कोई कैसे काम कर रहा है आप हर किसी को रोक नहीं सकते And we all know how many importance do we use in project when things are not going well, right? So this is what we do in our daily lives, and because we have short deadlines, we have to come over with a solution as quick as possible. So what are the options? Standardization, preprocessors, inline style, and in the end CSS in JS. Inline style is not CSS in JS, and I will come into that when we will talk about CSS in JS. So let's start with the basics, and that's the standardization methods we have been using. We have many, but I will look into the BAM here. This is the most popular. अच्छा ये सारे methods हमें encapsulation ही provide कर रहे हैं तो choice आपकी है कि आपको कौन सा मतलब सूट करता है और कौन सा आसान लगता है project wise तो आप utilize कर सकते हो अच्छा BAM is block element modifier so it has some rules and we have to follow it strictly if we need some encapsulation. Otherwise it will not work. So everything has a class. I mean everything. Like every element you have there, it should have a class. Element should never be directly styled because it has a class, right? So no nesting of style. By nesting I mean we can't use any selectors, pseudo selectors, and we can't nest them. Clear naming conventions should be there, and we should follow the syntax religiously. So this is how our CSS will look like. For example, we have a component called button, and element that depends upon the button is have a naming convention of like 2 underscores, and the modifier that modifies the block element is follow the double dashes in it. So that's how our component will look like in the end. the button, and the button with the modifiers and the element that depends on that component are following the underscore syntax. So everything has some pros and cons, and we will look into that. So it's a natural fit to component-based architecture because we are creating our CSS file taking in mind that we have one component and following that structure. So it's simple CSS, right? No JS here. Independent and reusable because we have followed the syntax. If we have followed the syntax, and single class names. And faster rendering because our rendering engines evaluate our selectors left to right. So if there would be less things to evaluate, then it will render fast. Okay, so this is a rigid structure, which is the main thing that BAMs come in. Like if you do not follow the rigid structure, you will not get the encapsulation. But I think this is the con as well because you have to follow the syntax and you are bound to follow some rules. You lose the benefit of cascade, obviously, and there is like you can do theming as well in it, but there are many other ways that can do theming stuff really well, like your preprocessors we have like SAS and LESS, and obviously it feels ugly. By ugly I mean the syntax, the double dashes, the double underscores, and obviously naming thing is hard. We all have to come up with a good name that any developers can read and understand what is happening here, right? Alright, so I'm going to skip the preprocessors here because of the less time I have here. So you can follow the BAM structure on the preprocessors, but we get some CSS modules and selectors and nesting and variables in preprocessors to work with. You can explore on that. Alright, so inline CSS, let's get started with this. And after that conversation, on the Facebook, everyone started working on inline CSS, and it was everywhere. And many designers just lost their mind because they were familiar with the CSS, and now they have to look into the JS as well. So that's how we do inline styling in React, and honestly, that's not how we use, but that's how we use. With a constant variable of style and just dig into the elements and the style attribute. And if you wanna like make it more proper, so you can use like external JS files and export your variables from there, import it here, and then use it along. So you can see the style as part of the component. No colliding styles obviously because the priority of inline style is the most highest. And no dat code because if you remove any element, then the style of that element is available in that file, so your linters can help you with that. Like you have an unused variable, please remove it. And it is closer to React Native if anyone has an experience, so you can follow this styles on the React Native as well. Alright, story time. So how many of you watch cricket? बात इसकी करनी नहीं है वैसे. And how many of you watch football? बात तो इसकी भी कुछ नहीं करनी. Tech event है यार. So story time. मेरा एक client था Macy's, नीसम का ही. If you don't know about Macy's, it's like Chase and Imtiaz in a bigger scale in US. So they have many outlets around, and it's an e-commerce domain, and we are working on their different modules. So they were like converting their legacy system into React, and they have some existing CSS files that they want to include in the project. So they wanted some ideas to work with the encapsulation issues and so on. So I came up with a solution and presented them this demo. At that time, I was not familiar with the CSS JS term. So okay, so can you see the code? Is it clear enough, or I have to zoom in? Okay. सही. अच्छा, तो ये एक मेरा कंपोनेंट है यार, जज नहीं करना मुझे. मैंने सिर्फ एक डेमो छोटा सा बनाया है, तो ये नहीं बोलना है कि एक ही जगह पे सब डाल दिया इसने, अलग अलग होने चाहिए थे कंपोनेंट, आई नो दैट। ठीक है, तो एक सिंपल सा मेरा कंपोनेंट है, उसके अंदर हेडर है और नेविगेशन बार है और ये मेरे पैराग्राफ्स हैं। तो पहले हम इस खूबसूरत सी चीज़ को देख लेते हैं। ये बहुत बेहतरीन सा मैंने स्टाइल बनाया है, एंड थैंक यू यार, दिस डोंट मेंशन। ठीक है, तो अच्छा, यहाँ पे मैंने उनको एग्जिस्टिंग क्लासेस भी यूज़ करनी थी और थीमिंग भी चाहिए थी, तो मैंने कहा यार कि भाई आप जो है ना एक काम करो, दो जो है ना JS की फ़ाइल अलग से बना लो। फॉर एग्जांपल डिफ़ॉल्ट क्लासेस एंड डिफ़ॉल्ट स्टाइल्स, like if you have worked with the preprocessors, so we have color palettes here, default palettes, font size, font weight, anything you want. And if you have any components like header and footer, so you can initiate their classes here, and obviously you can import the styles from that file and use it here as well, and import that into our hybrid demo. Why I call it a hybrid? Because it's a mix-up of CSS and inline JS, inline styles. तो ये मेरे डिफ़ॉल्ट स्टाइल्स मैंने वहाँ से एक्सपोर्ट किए थे, उनको इंपोर्ट कर लिया, और यहाँ पे सिंपली मैंने उनके जो एक्सपोर्ट किया था उनको यूटिलाइज़ कर लिया इस तरीके से। ठीक है, अगर मैं चाहता हूँ कि फॉर एग्जांपल मेरा नेविगेशन बार जो है मुझे एग्जिस्टिंग क्लास यूज़ करनी है मगर विद अ डिफरेंट बैकग्राउंड कलर, then I can, obviously this is a JavaScript, so we can utilize our spread operator and do anything we want. So I just created a new reference with mynef with a new color and put it here, and I've created one more function just for simplicity. It's just doing merging the, it's just only doing the spread operator thing by seeing the argument list. So I wanted a li with an active style in it. So, and the same thing follow on. So this was the first demo I gave them, and they were like amazed at why are we going to utilize the JS in it? We have some external CSS file. Are we going to like use them and edit them again and again with the style? As you know that we use style by camel case notation here in React, and there we have font dash family dash notations. So we have to edit them, and obviously there are many cons as well in inline CSS. So let's look into that. Okay, so it's really difficult to debug in DOM. That's the one thing. As you can see in the snapshot, the any style you add in the element gets in the this is what you see in the browser. Like every element has its own styles. So for example, if you have to change one style, so you have to click that specific element and change the style, and that's the big thing I guess for me, because we do the debugging in browser almost every time, and yeah, you lose the benefit of Cascade because you are using inline CSS and no external files and no selectors, and performance issue is there because just because of this, because every element have its style attributes and it needs to evaluate every element one by one with its style. With respect to CSS, downloading the style sheet is much faster and performant than the inline CSS because it has to evaluate one by one each element. And most probably we have some workarounds for pseudo selectors, media queries, and keyframe animations. You can do this in inline CSS, so you have to come up with some solutions to work with, and people started working on some open source libraries like Aphrodite, Radium to came up with the solutions of pseudo selectors and media queries and keyframe animations. All right, so CSS in JS, that's what the hot thing right now. Okay, so CSS in JS has some complaints as well, like the people who are using inline CSS, they are against them. So why reinventing the wheel? You don't know CSS. We have been working with CSS, so why new thing here? This is excessive tooling. Like I have said that we have to utilize any open source libraries for pseudo selectors and so on. So why adding one more library? There is a separation of concern, like the person like me likes to work with CSS in a different file and JS in a different file. Why mixing up things? And inline style is a bad thing, and we all know about that. That's how we grow up. So these are the open source libraries which are actually implementing the CSS in JS file. Actual CSS, not that inline thing. So we are going to look into the style component library here. Alright, so you have to install the style component library obviously. And for example, you have a div element or a paragraph and it has some text existing. You have to style that paragraph. So what you have to do is just get the default import from style. It has internal like it has many HTML elements, almost every element of HTML there. So you can utilize it style.p with the string literal we have for multi-line, and normal CSS is there, color, background. This is the CSS, not the JS. And by that you get a variable called text, and your text is your wrapper now. So your P will be changed with your variable. So what CSS and JS is doing is just creating a new unique class name with that variable and put it into the style head tag, and that's how your browser will show your elements in the with the new unique class names. Okay, so let's see this pros about everything is CSS here. So you can utilize your existing file style sheets, just copy the styles from there and paste it here. It's independent and reusable because you have like included your CSS in your component file, and you can move along with your component file with the style, and it's a complete package. Single use class name, so there would be no collisions, right? It also have basic SAS supports. You can utilize your logics here with the variables and the ternary operators and so on. It also have native mobile support and the theme support as well. Alright, so it is what we have many more choices there. Style component, Radium, Glamorous, Aphrodite. So you have to come up with only one framework, and you are going to use it for your project. And obviously our projects get scalable, and by time it changes, and this is an open source library. If anything happens, then you are like responsible for that. And obviously there is one more layer of a library and learning curve, because you have many developers and everyone has their mindset. So and junior developer comes in, he is familiar with the React. बड़ी मुश्किल से बेचारे को React थोड़ी बहुत समझ में आई थी, तो पता चला यार ये मैंने जो कंपोनेंट बनाया वो बनाना ही नहीं है, यहाँ पे जो स्टाइल का वेरिएबल है उसको यूटिलाइज मैंने इसमें करना है, तो उसके लिए और मुश्किलात आ गई हैं, पहले कम थी क्या. अच्छा, अब सवाल ये है कि व्हाट शुड आई यूज़. I will say very good question. Very good question. Next question. So what we're gonna do, I don't know what you wanna do. What I can say that ask the right questions. What are the mental models on the team? That's the main thing. You have to think of that. You have to ask the questions because it really depends on the projects you are working with. What are the skill level on the team? There are many designers as well who likes to work with only CSS, not the JS, so they will have to work with the programming, and that's the scariest thing they have. And what do you need to build, right? And how do you plan on structuring your project? These are the, I think, most basic questions you can ask in your team and come up with a good solution by discussing. And whatever works best for you and makes you happy is hand down the best solution always. Thank you. Any questions?